The world of professional wrestling has lost one of its most iconic and influential figures as news breaks that WWE legend Hulk Hogan has passed away at the age of 71. Hogan, whose name became synonymous with the sport itself, died following complications related to a long-standing heart condition. While the wrestling community reels from the loss, fans around the globe are mourning the death of a man whose persona, both inside and outside the squared circle, shaped the face of modern professional wrestling. His impact transcended sports entertainment, making him a true pop culture icon. A legend is born, the early years of Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, born Terry Eugene Bollea on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, never anticipated the extraordinary life that awaited him. Raised in a working-class family, Hogan's early years didn't hint at the global superstardom he would one day achieve. His love for sports and physical fitness was evident from a young age, and he found his calling in the world of bodybuilding. As a teenager, Hogan began working out regularly, and by the age of 16, he was a seasoned weightlifter. However, his true journey into the world of professional wrestling began in 1976 when he began training under legendary wrestling coach Hiro Matsuda in Tampa, Florida. Hogan, who had adopted the persona of the Hulk by this time, quickly made a name for himself in the Florida wrestling scene. His towering physique, combined with a natural charisma that was already apparent in his early years, gave him an aura of a man who was destined for greatness. Hulkamania, the phenomenon that changed wrestling forever. Hogan's arrival in the WWF in 1983 marked the beginning of a wrestling revolution. When he first stepped into the ring with his signature bleach blonde hair, mustache, and dazzling charisma, fans were immediately captivated. But it was his early feud with the Iron Sheik that would define the start of what became known as Hulkamania. In January of 1984, Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik to win the WWF World Heavyweight Championship, a victory that would go on to change the entire landscape of professional wrestling. Hulk Hogan's persona, the embodiment of strength, heroism, and a larger-than-life personality, took on a life of its own. The Hulkamania movement spread like wildfire, with fans shouting, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" wherever Hogan went. His success wasn't just about his in-ring ability, it was about the connection he made with fans on an emotional level. He was their hero, a symbol of hope and perseverance. The more Hogan dominated in the ring, the more his fan base grew. He was a hero not only for wrestling fans, but for children and families who adored his charisma and larger-than-life character. A cultural phenomenon, Hollywood and beyond. While his wrestling career flourished, Hogan's star was also rising in Hollywood. His success in Rocky III opened doors to a career in film, and throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, Hogan appeared in several movies, including No Holds Barred, 1989, and Suburban Commando, 1991. Though his movies weren't necessarily critical darlings, they contributed to the growing pop culture phenomenon that was Hulk Hogan. In addition to his film career, Hogan also made appearances on television, including as a guest on popular talk shows and variety programs. His ability to connect with audiences, both in front of the camera and in the wrestling ring, was unmatched. His larger-than-life persona, embodying both strength and kindness, resonated deeply with fans, especially children, who saw Hogan as a real-life superhero. But it wasn't just his work in film and television that made Hogan a cultural icon. It was his influence on a generation of wrestlers and fans. Hogan was instrumental in bringing wrestling into mainstream consciousness, and his success paved the way for future superstars, including The Rock, John Cena, and many others, who would follow in his footsteps and become cross-industry stars. The rise and fall, personal struggles and controversies. While Hogan's professional success seemed unassailable, his personal life was far from perfect. In the late 1980s, Hogan's marriage to Linda Bollea was one of the most public and scrutinized relationships in the wrestling world. The couple had 2 children together, Nick and Brooke, but in 2009, after more than 20 years of marriage, the two divorced amidst intense media scrutiny. The details of their separation were painful and personal, and the public's fascination with their lives only intensified in the years that followed. As Hogan's personal life became increasingly turbulent, so did his professional trajectory. In the 2000s, Hogan returned to WWE, first as part of the New World Order (NWO) storyline, a faction that shook the wrestling world. However, his return was marred by controversies, including a legal battle with the website Gawker over the release of a private sex tape. The legal proceedings were long and highly publicized, leading to a major scandal in Hogan's personal life. In 2015, racial slurs that Hogan had used in a private conversation were revealed, causing a temporary severing of his relationship with WWE. Despite these controversies, Hogan continued to make a return to wrestling. In 2018, he was reinstated into the WWE Hall of Fame, proving that, in the wrestling world at least, there is always room for redemption. A life of health struggles. Hogan's later years. Hulk. Hogan, one of the most recognizable figures in professional wrestling, spent his entire life in the public eye. But behind the dazzling lights, the high-energy promos, and the electrifying matches, was a man who paid a heavy price for his success in the ring. As the years went by, the physical toll of decades of wrestling caught up with him in ways that could no longer be ignored. Wrestling, as thrilling and glamorous as it is an incredibly physical sport. The sheer brutality of slamming opponents, taking body slams, jumping off the ropes, and enduring high-impact moves day after day left Hogan with injuries that would ultimately alter the course of his life. Over the years, he underwent a staggering number of surgeries. Among the most challenging were multiple back surgeries, which became necessary due to the strain his spine had endured from years of taking punishment in the ring. Each surgery added more complications, and at times it seemed like he was simply unable to escape the effects of his long, illustrious career. By the early 2000s, it became clear that Hogan's active wrestling days were over. The man who once dominated the squared circle, lifting opponents much heavier than him with ease, found himself increasingly sidelined by health issues. His body had been pushed to its absolute limits, and though his passion for wrestling never faltered, his physical ability to compete at the highest level did. It was a bitter pill for a man who had once defined the sport, but Hogan stepped away from the spotlight, largely limiting himself to occasional appearances and smaller roles within the wrestling world. The final chapter, Hulk. Hogan's passing. Tragically, Hulk Hogan's health issues finally caught up with him on July 26, 2025. He passed away at the age of 71 in his home in Clearwater, Florida, surrounded by family. Hogan had been battling a heart condition for some time, and despite appearing relatively healthy in the years leading up to his death, his body had simply reached a point where it could no longer withstand the pressures of age and accumulated injuries. The news of his death sent shockwaves through the world, not just within the wrestling community, but across popular culture. For millions of fans who grew up watching Hogan slam his way through opponents in the WWF and later WWE, the loss was like losing a part of their childhood. The heartbreak was palpable as fans and colleagues alike began to pay tribute to a man who had left an indelible mark on their lives. Though Hogan's passing was deeply sad, his legacy is undeniable. He was not just a wrestler, he was a cultural icon who transcended his sport. From his classic rivalry with Andre the Giant to his unforgettable moments at WrestleMania, Hogan's impact on the world of professional wrestling is immeasurable. But his influence didn't stop there. He helped bring wrestling into the mainstream, turning it into the global phenomenon it is today. A wrestling community in mourning Hogan's death has cast a shadow over the wrestling world. For many of the current stars, men like The Rock, John Cena, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hogan was not only a mentor, but an inspiration. He was the standard-bearer for what it meant to be a wrestling champion. For years, Hogan set the bar when it came to wrestling talent, charisma, and the ability to connect with an audience. Fellow wrestlers have taken to social media to express their sadness and gratitude for the impact Hogan had on their lives and careers. The Rock, who has frequently spoken about how Hogan inspired him to become a wrestler and actor, shared a heartfelt tribute, calling Hogan the true pioneer of wrestling and the man who made it possible for guys like me to live out our dreams. WWE also issued an official statement following Hogan's passing, recognizing his unparalleled contributions to the company. Today, the world of sports entertainment lost one of its most important and influential figures, the statement read. Hulk Hogan was not just a champion inside the ring, but a global ambassador for the sport of professional wrestling. His legacy will live on forever. Fans, too, have poured out their emotions on social media and in the streets, sharing their memories of watching Hogan's matches, attending his events, and quoting his iconic lines. For many, he wasn't just a wrestler. He was a hero, a larger-than-life figure who stood for perseverance, strength, and overcoming the odds. Hulk Hogan's lasting legacy. Though Hulk Hogan is no longer with us, his influence on the world of professional wrestling will never fade. He didn't just help build WWE, he helped build the very foundation on which the wrestling world stands today. As the first true crossover star, Hogan helped to bring the sport into the mainstream, making it accessible to an entirely new audience. His matches were not just contests of strength, but epic battles that captivated people from all walks of life. Hogan was the ultimate performer. He understood what it took to be more than just a wrestler. He knew how to entertain, how to connect with his fans, and how to make every match feel like an unforgettable moment. For generations, he was the face of wrestling, the figure who drew people to arenas and into their living rooms every week. In the years to come, his legacy will continue to inspire new wrestlers, actors, and entertainers. Hulk Hogan didn't just create a brand, he created an entire culture. He showed the world that larger-than-life characters could have a lasting, meaningful impact on entertainment. And in doing so, he carved a permanent place for himself in the annals of history. We truly appreciate your support. Subscribe and be part of our journey.